Hello and welcome to another session of Enterprise Tuesday, which I see as a melting pot of entrepreneurial drive and ambition. It is hosted by the Entrepreneurship Center, where it aims to build relationships with the wider Cambridge entrepreneurial community and inspiring people like Janneke here with us today. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to watch later on YouTube. You will be able to participate in the Q&A. Please direct any questions you have to the Q&A box, and we will be answering them after Janneke's talk. I'm an astrophysicist. My name is Halabi. I'm a social entrepreneur as well, and I lead EnterpriseWOMEN at Cambridge Judge Business School's Entrepreneurship Center. We are all grappling with this tremendous uncertainty the pandemic has left us with. But after thinking about it, I realized that while other people may be struggling to find their footing, uncertainty is an entrepreneur's normal. Extreme uncertainty lurks at every corner, really. So this reality we're living in is very much represents an entrepreneur's life. The outcome of the innovation process, you know very well, is so unpredictable. And as Mike Tyson puts it, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so startup founders really get repeatedly punched in the face by market realities, customer expectations, competitors, and so on and so forth. You are all here today because you have an entrepreneurial mindset, which is about embracing this pain point and turning it into an opportunity to create novel solutions. This is something I think to celebrate. This is something to celebrate. And while this may or may not result in a business idea, the important thing is that entrepreneurs don't just sit back and accept the status quo. Am I right? Do you really feel this way? It's never been important to be agile, to be experimental, to be innovative, to be an entrepreneur. And you are here today to celebrate this mindset that you have, this ambition and this drive. And in our modern economies and diverse economies, entrepreneurship is really essential. It's a catalyst that can drive growth and economic development. And this is also something to celebrate and encourage and nurture. So we've got for you today a very inspiring entrepreneur among the many hats that she wears. Our keynote speaker is Janneke Niessen. Janneke is a serial entrepreneur, an angel investor, and board member and mentor for startups. She co-founded CapitalT, a Netherlands-based venture capital firm. She started and sold 2 international tech companies, and she is behind initiatives to increase diversity in tech and to encourage young girls to pursue a career in technology. She's also active in driving the policy around investment in female entrepreneurs in the Netherlands. Janneke sits on various boards, including the UNICEF, and she has won several awards, including the 2014 EY Entrepreneur of the Year and Most Innovative Leader in 2016. And also one of the most prominent angel investors in 2018. She will share today with us lessons from growing her company from startup to scale up. Janneke will also talk about the pitfalls and the best practices that can make or break your business. She will share some honest truths, as she calls them, about her entrepreneurial journey, and will cover the importance of building a diverse and inclusive team and company. Janneke, over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Yes, you should be seeing my screen right now. Welcome everybody. It's a pity I can't meet you in person. I was just saying how I always like being around students who are curious and always have a ton of questions. But well, it is what it is, and it's nice that we can do it anyhow this way. You heard the introduction about me, so I don't want to talk about that for too long, but dive into the presentation. So a lot of entrepreneurs are always looking to build a unicorn, a company that's worth 1 billion or more. But what does it take to build a successful company? And especially now, people ask, when is the best time? Should we start a company now, or is it actually a horrible time? For me, I've started a company 3 times in a crisis, and it always worked out really well. So for me, it has always been a great timing. And I think when you start in a crisis, the only way is up. So it's much more difficult, in my opinion, to go through a crisis when your company is already big and you need to adjust it versus actually starting one. But I think more importantly, crises are often lead to certain change. And I think when you can come up with an idea that adapts to that change and sees opportunities in that change, and it's better than what's out there, it's something new, it's something different, I think that's when you're actually really set up for success. If you have a solution to an important problem, and I think that's when it's the best time to start a company, when you have a great idea. But it's not just about the idea. It's also very much about the execution and about the team. And that's what I'm going to talk about. There's a million people with a great idea, but there's not that many people that can execute really well and actually make that vision they have a reality. I've done it now a few times, but made a lot of mistakes. And I think when you speak to entrepreneurs, that the honest ones will all admit that they make mistakes. It's definitely not an easy route, but for me, it has been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I would do it a million times over. It's really tough, but in the end, it's a lot of fun. So let's jump into some of the lessons. First, a really important one that I learned quite early on is that perception is reality. So when we started my last company, not the current one, but the one before, we only had US competitors. And they were really different in their approach to the market and their communication style. We were really honest and factual, and so we would send out a press release when a feature was fully out of beta, ready to go to all clients, while our competitors would send out a press release way sooner when they started testing the feature, for example. So the perception that our clients and potential clients had about us was that they were way more ahead than us because they released everything sooner. In reality, the features we had were sort of similar, but it's really the perception that others have of you that really matter. And as soon as we realized that, and also that you can manage that perception, we really changed our communication. We were still probably less bold than our US competitors, but we started thinking about what to communicate and when, and that made a big difference. So one example that I still think is really great of one of our competitors, we had an office in London, and then they also started opening an office in London, and they opened this office with 12 desks. And everybody was talking about it, how serious they were entering the market, big office, 12 desks, weren't we afraid? The reality was that there were only 2 people sitting at those desks. But by communicating something really different, the perception was that they came in really big. So it's those kind of things that really made us change the way we communicated and actually manage the perception other people had of us. Also really by looking at how our competitors did things. It's also really important to be able to say no. People hardly ever discuss the opportunity cost of saying yes. But as a startup, there's only so much money you have, and you can only spend it once. So when you say yes to one thing, means you cannot do something else. And a good example here is we could easily sign a lot of contracts in Eastern Europe with that company, but the margins there were pretty low. And signing a contract was one thing, but you still needed a support team on it. You needed all kinds of things to execute on those contracts. So the same type of client, but then in the Nordics, would actually result in much more money for the company, revenue. So sometimes, even if it seems an easy opportunity, it's important to say no to it and think about the opportunity cost of doing it. Also, I think it's important to every now fire clients. Go through your list of clients and see which ones actually make you money. There can be a few, but never really more than 1 or 2 that are amazing brand names and you don't make a lot of money on them, but the marketing value of having them on board is great. But it's also sometimes nice to fire a client. And I think everybody recognizes that one client that really sucks the energy out of your entire team is always complaining, and then you don't even make money on them. Fire those kind of clients. Very important to hire people that are smarter than you. As an entrepreneur, you're really good at everything normally. So hiring other people, they must be smarter than you, otherwise you're going to micromanage them. And then you will never scale your company and you become the bottleneck for growth. So make sure that they are smarter so you don't feel the need to micromanage them and they can actually help make your company more successful. We also made a mistake in the beginning of our company to hire people we could afford instead of the best people. And whenever I would start another company, I would always make sure to hire the best people. And if I could not afford them, wait. Because having too many okay people won't make you as successful as you can be. Your team is super, super crucial. And I will talk more about that later on. Well, here they are, the Kung Fu Pandas. In a fast-growing company, like any startup or scale-up, you need people that can change a lot and that are willing to learn many different things. So in the beginning of your company, you need people that can do a lot of different things. But when the company grows, you probably want them to specialize more. And people that are able to adapt to that reality are really special. Because there's a lot of people that can't handle the fact that their responsibility maybe is bigger but smaller, and they feel less involved. So having those people that actually can evolve with your company is super important. Because those people, they are not just valuable for the work they do, but they also carriers of the culture you have. So we were always we always made sure that we had special events for people that stayed with us for 5 years, because doing that at a bank might not be that special. But when you are in a startup or scale up and you keep being relevant for that company over that time frame is very special. At the same time, people that cannot handle that cannot change from being responsible for a lot of things to being responsible for a few things, you should go, because they will also again block the growth of your company. And again, that's super difficult, because those were the people that were with you from the beginning, and you often know them. It feels like a family, because you've worked so hard on this one thing. But as difficult as it is, if they're not willing to change, you need to let them go. The same for big companies. I think they often hire people that fit in a box, and that fit really well in a box. But also larger companies need to change constantly. And if you have people that only fit in one box and don't change all the time when it's necessary, then it's really difficult as a large company to move. So in my opinion, also larger companies should hire more Kung Fu Pandas, people that don't fit in the box you might expect, but that are actually willing to learn and constantly willing to learn and can change with you. So make sure you hire Kung Fu Pandas in large companies and in small companies, because if, let's assume you would have a Kung Fu company, they don't exist, but you would never hire a Panda to work there, because, well, it doesn't look like it will work out. But with the right attitude, people can learn a lot. And an attitude is not something learn, but people. First, say yes, and then make a plan. This is really important for when you want to force yourself outside your comfort zone. And as an entrepreneur, that's what you do all the time. All the time you have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to do things for the first time. And the good thing about saying yes and then come up with a plan is that you can no longer say no, but you can only think about how you're going to make it happen. So an example, I had a colleague that we hired to do video with the previous company for us, and she was really good at that. And then an interview request came in from Dutch television, and suddenly I saw a colleague instead of her, and I was like, why is he doing this? You're supposed to do this. And she was like, yeah, well, but I thought he would be better, and yeah, he wanted it really badly. So I was like, fine. And I was like, no, you're the expert. Then an interview request came in from Dutch radio. And again, I heard somebody else, and I called her up and I said, what is this? And she was coming up with excuses again. And then I said, okay, I think you're just afraid to do this. So next time you get a request like this, you say yes, then you're going to call me, and then we make a plan. So then she was invited to speak for a few hundred people in Zurich. And she called me and she said, yeah, I said, yes, so now what? And I was like, well, we're going to hire a speaker coach so we can prepare you really well. And then right before you go on stage, you will have sweaty hands and you will hate me for having to say yes. But after you're done, because you're going to kill it on stage, and after you're done, you will be really happy that you did it, because next time it will be more easy. And so she did, and it happened as planned. So if you're afraid, if something is outside your comfort zone, say yes, and then come up with a plan. There's no such thing as overnight success. People sometimes think that based on what they see in the media or from the outside. But for example, with my second company, we sold it after a few years already, and people were like, oh, you're suddenly so successful. Well, it's not really suddenly, because it's the network you've built up for 15 years. It's everything you've learned in the 15 to 20 years before that. So everything builds up to that moment. So there's hardly anybody that really has overnight success. So always remember that when you work really hard for a lot of years. Put yourself in the spotlight. That's really important to make sure that other people get to know you. Journalists, VCs, potential employees, they need to know you, but they are not going to automatically find you. So you need to work to make sure that they see you. And that can feel weird in the beginning, that you sort of need to brag about yourself. But if you don't, why would anybody else believe that you're awesome? So make sure that you build up a relationship with journalists. Make sure that you apply for a few awards, because it's not like they are automatically given to you just because people think you're great. You need to make sure that they know you. And it really helps. And I hated it in the beginning, because you think that if I do the right thing, people will notice. And in some cases it works like that, but in most cases it doesn't. So you have to make sure that other people see you. And after a certain moment, people do know you, and then everything happens much more automatically, and you get to go on certain lists and people will approach you. But being out there is super key. Just for VCs, because if they have heard about you already, they feel like, oh, that must be a good company. For people that work with you, if they have heard about you before, it will be more easy for them to apply. So get over yourself and say, hi, I'm here and I'm awesome. And the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I think this is a really important one, because being an entrepreneur can feel very lonely. Even if you have a co-founder, that's definitely helpful. But sometimes it can feel like everything falls apart and your competitor is doing much better on a lot of fronts. They hired an amazing person, they closed a round, they released some new features, and on your end, your round is delayed, your features are delayed, and the amazing hire you did turned out to be really horrible. But it's very important to understand where you get the information from your competitor, and that's often through press releases. And people then don't send out press releases about their failures and about that amazing hire that turned out not to be that great. So make sure that you have a strong network of fellow entrepreneurs that you can share these things with, because you will find that everybody is in the same position. And when we started talking to our competitors, it turned out that we actually were in quite a good position, and we thought they were way ahead of us, and that turned out not to be right. But their press and their perception we had of them was really different. So everybody goes through issues, but you only know when you talk to other entrepreneurs. If I would accept every coffee invite I would get from people, then I think I would OD on coffee, if that's even possible. But I think it's very important to have mentors and peers you talk to and everything, but be careful in how you approach them. If you send a very original but also to the point email to somebody, then the chances that they are willing to help you are much bigger than that you just say, can we have a coffee? When you don't know, the other side doesn't know what the question is. And if you have a specific question, then maybe they can answer via email or via a call. People are often very willing to help, but time is limited. And you just can't have coffee. So be specific in your questions and see if maybe it can be solved in a different way than a meeting. But then again, it's also important, like I mentioned before, to have a network of peers. So I have a group of people I know through work, where we have dinner every 2 months and we share everything. So our fears, our struggles, our wins, our dreams, everything. And that really helps to keep yourself sane. And peace can often already be very helpful in solving a lot of the things you're struggling with. Then networking is super important. I only now, for the last few years, feel that all the effort I've put in my network and all the things I've done for other people in the past are now paying off. But it doesn't happen in the office. You need to be out there. You need to meet people. You need to help people if you want to help them and not expect anything in return. There's so many things you can do to expand your network, but it's super important. And more, I feel it's more important who you know than what you know. Yeah, I even try to network more than I've done in the past. When I was much younger, I didn't realize it as much as I do today. So you can still do it the right way. So please network, go out there and talk to people, make friends. Just go out there and don't stay in the office too much. It's important to surround yourself with people that do not applaud you. Applause is nice from your parents, your friends, your partner, but from the people around you, it's much better to have them challenge you, because that's the only way to get better. The moment you feel you have achieved everything, that you're there, is actually the moment you start to go downhill. If you have doubled, then instead of applause, you actually want somebody that asks, well, could you maybe also have tripled your revenue? Not because doubling is not amazing, but maybe you could have tripled. And you can only find out if people ask the tough questions as well. So make sure that you surround yourself with these people that dare to challenge you and dare to ask the questions. When you're going to fundraise for your company, there's a few things that are very important. First of all, you should wonder whether you actually want to work with venture capital, because it's not the right fit for every company and not the right fit for every person, because venture capital also comes with certain expectations about the rate in which you grow your company, what is expected from what you're going to do in the next years. And although, of course, I think it's a great instrument, I also think it's not the right thing for everybody. It's also important to focus on the value of a deal and not just the valuation. People tend to focus very much on the valuation. And build that you want, but in a deal that can be much more than just money. So a VC that has a great brand name that can help you open doors, get new employees in, new clients, but also on the downside, there can be a lot of things that that can work against you. 10 years ago or something, I read an article how to build a $1 billion company and walk away with nothing. There can be all kind of tricks in agreements you have that actually can really have you walk away with nothing. So make sure you understand all these things. And there's a great book, Secrets of Sand Hill Road, written by one of the partners of Andreessen Horowitz, called Cooper. And he shares everything about how the industry works. And it's super important to read that and to understand all these things before you enter in a relationship with a VC and a business relationship, of course. And it's not to scare you away, but to make sure that you are an equal partner to them and can negotiate with the right background information, because in the end, a VC has a business model as well, like you do. So make sure you understand how these mechanics work. Then about the negotiation, you should be aware of the salami technique. Let me explain that. Entrepreneurship is number one fun thing to do. You want to build your company, you want to build on your product, your service, you want to sell, you want to be out there, but fundraising, it's not great. So once you have a deal, you really feel like you're there and you can go back to your normal life again. But that's the moment where you need to be very sharp, because that's also the moment where little things can come up and you're in solution mode, because you want to get rid of the entire process. And so for each thing that comes up, you're looking for a solution. But at a certain point, you look back and you're like, wait a minute. I have been a salami. Each time with each problem I try to solve, a piece has been cut off. And now what I thought was a great deal is actually only half a salami. So make sure that you are aware that this can happen. And we had this happen to us, and then we actually, well, we really could not afford it. But we said, sorry, but you've gone too far. We don't want to do the deal anymore. And that's when actually the deal closed within a day, because then the other side felt, okay, we've now done everything we could to get a good deal. The next thing, very important, ask for help. Share your plan, share your ideas. You never know who can help you. And especially now in this Corona crisis time, it's even more important to continue communicating, because everything that happens can be very overwhelming. You see your entire company slip through and go down the drain without you having any influence on it. But you're an entrepreneur, so you're creative, you can come up with ideas. But if you're in the middle of everything, it might not feel like that. So by talking to other people, they can give you the right perspective, and maybe they can give you the help you need. But also in other times, because hopefully Corona will pass, it's very important to talk to people, to ask for help, and share your dreams. When we published the book for young girls to get them excited about technology, I thought it would be amazing to hand the first copy to the Queen of the Netherlands, Queen Maxima. She has 3 daughters, and I thought, well, this is a perfect fit. And everybody laughed at me like, haha, like that will ever happen. But I just shared that with a lot of people. And then at one point, I met somebody, Nelly Cruz, and she said, oh, but I can help you make that happen. And she did make it happen. And we actually handed the first copy of the book in the palace to the Queen. So share your dreams, because other people might be able to help you, but they don't know if you don't share them. There's one really, really big superpower that entrepreneurs have, and that's the ability to deal with no's. You hear no's all the time. People that don't believe in your plan, that don't believe in your vision, that think what you have come up with there's no need for, clients that turn you down for all the wrong reasons, or maybe the right reasons. You hear no so often, and you can handle it. But there's always also days where it's tough to deal with the no's. But I think, and then you just, that they pass. But in general, I really believe that handling no's is the biggest superpower of entrepreneurs. When you push down, keep getting up. And I think that's super special. It's really important to celebrate all your successes, the big ones, but also the small ones. And because the road to the end goal, whatever that is very long. And you should not forget to actually enjoy the ride and not just the finish. And what we had in our last company was a little fridge with champagne, depending on when there was real champagne or super fake champagne. But everybody in the company could call for a champagne moment. And the only rule we had was, if you think it's worth celebrating with a champagne moment, you can call for a champagne moment. And that's because what is success is different for everybody. For somebody in sales, that's a contract. That's often quite obvious. But for somebody in engineering, that can be solving a bug that was there already for weeks. Or it can be making something much more quick, so everything runs faster. Or if for somebody in finance, it can be many reasons for people to feel that they can celebrate something. So make sure that you acknowledge everybody's successes and not just the sales success. Then I want to talk a little bit about team, because team is the most important factor for success. 90% of startups fail, and in 60% of the cases, that's due to issues with the team. So that's quite a lot. My business partner, Eva, she did her PhD in economics at Berkeley in San Francisco. And she looked at what makes great entrepreneurial teams from a science view. And that model that she created, we use as the basis for our VC firm to evaluate teams, to see if they are the right team to invest in, if they will be successful. And there's a few things that are part of that model, but I also experienced myself as an entrepreneur that I would like to share. So one of the things is personality traits. So that's things like stress resistance, perseverance, resilience. Again, the superpower, the ability to handle no's. Those are super important for an entrepreneur. But also passion for entrepreneurship. So are you really, really passionate about what you do? Because that will make sure you are more resilient and you are more creative, and the chances that you are successful are much bigger. And what is interesting here is you can also have the wrong kind of passion. And that you sometimes see with people that start for the wrong reasons, that start because they want to get rich versus actually build a successful company. But also there's different types of passion. Part of the entrepreneurial journey that you can be passionate about. Maybe you're passionate about inventing, like the product and service, or about the real start of a company. You see that very often, that certain entrepreneurs really like that early phase and then want to move on and start another company. And entrepreneurs that like developing a company. So really make it bigger, into a scale up, build a culture, build a team. And these can all be very successful entrepreneurs. What is important though is that if you are with multiple founders, that you're not too different in those passions, because the decisions you make and or where you want to go, that will obviously lead to issues. Then there's the human capital skills. So really startup experience, failure experience, industry experience. There really needs to be diversity on that side. So make sure that you truly have different skill sets within people. And in my opinion, the most important part are the team dynamics. So without the right team cohesion, without without a shared vision, you can put the smartest people in the room, but they won't be successful if they don't share this. And if people don't feel safe within a team, don't feel safe to speak up, that will have destructive impact on the team as well. But that doesn't mean that conflict can't be good. Conflict, in fact, is super important, but it needs to be the right kind of conflict. So it needs to be about the content, not about the person. And sometimes it can be very difficult to have these discussions, but in the end, things will get better if you really have different opinions and then you manage to get people still on the same line. It's always just very important not to take it personal and not to make it personal. And that's why I think you see a lot of founding teams also work with mediators early on, people guiding these processes and making sure that people really discuss things in the right way. That's super important to make sure that you don't break up with each other. Then the question is, do entrepreneurs never have fear of failure? I think they all have, and in quite an extreme way. I think the only reason why a lot of entrepreneurs just don't stay in bed with a bad sheet over their head, crying sometimes, is that their desire to make something successful is just bigger than their fear of failure. And but if you have these feelings, everybody has them, so don't worry too much about them. I know we tend to talk too much in the press about our successes, but that fear of failure, I think everybody has that. And then again, I go back to please talk to other people about that. And then I get to the last part of the presentation, the importance of diversity. I think you read about it a lot. In tech, there's not a lot of diversity, not in the tech companies themselves, nor in VC companies, so venture capital. And you read about it so much that you might lose sight on, well, why is this actually a problem? Why do we need to have diversity? If people don't want to work in tech or at VC, it should be fine, right? Well, first of all, it's not. It's often not that they don't want to work there, it's that they are discouraged to do that. But why is it actually a problem for everybody? Well, first of all, VCs fund the future. 7 of the 10 most valuable companies of today one day started with VC funding. So they decide which companies get funding and have the ability to grow and can be the next big thing. And with the lack of diversity on the VC side, it's actually quite a homogeneous group of people that decide which products and services we need for the future. I think that's worrisome. I think we should build that future with everybody. It's also financially better. Diverse teams perform better also financially. But also, if technology is one of the fastest growing sectors in the world, it has an impact on your financial independence as an individual. So, but also for companies in general, they perform better when there's more diversity. So it's the most easy way to actually get an increase in your revenues and results of 10 to 15%. But one of the key things, in my opinion, is the impact on the products and services. There's so many examples where the lack of diversity has had a big impact on how things worked for a lot of people. So especially with AI, people tend to think it's neutral because it's an algorithm, but it's not. It is an algorithm, but it is code, but it's created by people and with their own context and bias, and the input data very often is not neutral. So a few examples, maybe people know about the racist soap dispenser, not AI related, but you often see these dispensers on on public places where you just need to put your hand under them and not touch them to get the soap. For people of color, these things often don't work. They need to put a napkin under it. And it turned out that the machine needs the reflection of a person's hand to actually work. So it doesn't work on a dark hand. Then there's this example of a person who wanted to enter a gym and was refused because her card said she's a doctor and the camera detected a woman. So the system decided that's not possible, a woman, that's a doctor. But there's so many examples where things have a really bad outcome. The algorithm that decides on prison sentence in certain places in the US, where it turned out that the input data included a lot of institutionalized racism, and therefore people of color got way heavier sentences than white people. And I think to make sure that our future is inclusive and the products and services we use are inclusive, it's super important to have diverse group of people working on them, because at a certain point you won't be able to find out anymore. Then it's just a matter of the computer says no, and people don't know what caused things to happen. So it's something I think we need to be really aware of, and I can talk about this for another hour, but I won't. But look up some of these articles, you will be shocked. This number, 2.4%, is the percentage of VC funding that goes to female founders worldwide. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, sometimes it's a little bit lower, but it's always extremely low. A few percent also goes to diverse teams. People of color get even less. They are really, in the difficult corner when it comes to VC funding. I think this is shockingly low number. Two facts to emphasize how shocking this is. In 2018, all female founders put together received 10 billion less in funding than one e-cigarette company, Juul, took in by itself. So, well, I think this speaks for itself. And then the other one, in 2019, all female founders put together received 2 billion less in funding than one company already in trouble, WeWork, took in by itself. So as long as we have these horrible examples, we still have a long way to go. But it means that we need more diversity on the VC side as well, because it is proven that people, and it's a very human thing to be biased, people invest in what they know, what they recognize. And to change that, we need to make sure there's more diverse people, so you can recognize more founders and recognize more problems. There's many examples of founders that didn't get funding initially just because VCs didn't understand their product or service. And then we get to what I think is really important to change that, and that is role models. And I'm first going to show a short video that will show you why role models are so important. Turn up your volume, please.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is firefighter.
Have a think in your head what a firefighter looks like.
What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary. Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon. He's big and strong. He's got a big hat on.
brilliant, isn't it? Next, we're going to draw a surgeon.
Have you thought of a name for your surgeon?
Jim Bob. He's a brain surgeon. I think he would wear a stethoscope. He gives you medicine.
That's his ambulance. Okay, next, we're going to draw a fighter pilot.
This is his jet plane. He rescues people. He likes to do stunts in the air and stuff.
Okay, now who would like to meet these people for real? Yeah! My name's Tamsin and I'm a surgeon in the NHS.
My name's Lauren and I'm a pilot in the Royal Air Force.
My name's Lucy. I'm a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade.
Who's put it on?
Try my stethoscope.
We'll put this in here. There you go. Now you're proper fighter pilot.
Check your serious. Can you hear that? It's really good. Yeah, it's much better than my kids' one.
So I think this video shows really well the importance of role models. If she can see it, she can be it. And I think it's important to realize, whoever is watching now, men and women, is to realize that you are a role model. And it might feel strange. The first time somebody told me, oh, you're a role model, I was looking behind me, who are you talking to? But it is true. And you can show them what you do and that they can achieve anything. And I also found out that it's very important when you work in tech and it's less obvious what you do, that you're quite a specific role model. So I thought I was killing it as a role model for my kids. Entrepreneur, financially independent, working in tech, I ticked all the boxes. But then at a certain point, my oldest son said, oh, well, Mom, when I grow up, I want to be in the military like that. And his dad now works at the ocean cleanup, but then was in the military. And I was like, wait a minute, why in the military? So what do you think Mommy does for a living? Well, you're a princess. And I was like, okay, something really goes wrong here. So I said, what do you think a princess does all day? Dancing. So there I was thinking I was an amazing role model. I was a princess that was dancing. And then I left for another work trip and he said, happy holiday, Mom. So it got even worse. He even thought I just went on holiday. So I started talking more about what I do. And I said, well, I'm an inventor with computers. I found it difficult back then to explain what I did. And I started making videos when I'm on work trips. I do. And it helped because a few months after that, my oldest said, Mom, you're super smart because you're an inventor. And I was like, yes. And then my youngest said, yeah, and a princess. So, but inventor and princess is fine for me. But be explicit, explain what you do, show them that it's fun. It can be your kids, your nieces, it's somebody in the neighborhood. And it's also, we're almost there, also important to challenge your own bias, because again, it's a very human thing, and I have it as well. Everybody has it, but it's important to challenge yourself. So you can look at these ice creams as a nice treat on a hot day or as a calorie bomb, and they are both. One example I want to share is when we were hiring a VP data engineering, we got a resume of a person and he was amazing. So we interviewed him and we all were like, how could we have been so lucky to get this resume? And then I invited him to our head office in Amsterdam. And he said, well, there's a thing you should know. I need a little bit more help because I'm blind. And my first response was, oh no, finally the perfect candidate, and now he's blind. Stupid thinking. My second thought was, but well, wait a minute. if he can do all these things while being blind, it's more my limitation that I have no clue how you can be a VP data engineer and blind. That is his limitation. So we hired him, and it was the best hire ever. I still work with him today. He is an amazing person. He can build everything, and I still don't get how, but I think it's very important to challenge yourself, because you can easily miss out on the best person you've ever hired by being biased. Then very important on the diversity side, that it's not men versus women, minorities versus not minorities. And especially sometimes it can feel that it's women fighting for this. But I think it's very important that we also have our wingmen. This is something that's important to all of us, and we need men on board as well to find this important. And I really want to emphasize this. It's not about how we've done things in the past. It's very much about how we're going to make this change in the future together. Questions?
Thank you so much, Janneke. Thank you. This was truly wonderful. Such insight and relevant advice. I mean, I can name a few, but there were so many. One of the few that I'll name a few that resonated with me. Hiring the right people, understanding the differently abled and embracing diversity, learning to say no, and also embracing the superpower of being on the receiving end of no.
Yeah.
Truly wonderful. The power of network, the power of mentors, if we know how to ask them the right question and how to address them and how to benefit from their expertise and being specific. Embracing the possibilities of being challenged and actually seeking these possibilities to be challenged and not shy away from them, because that's how you grow. Negotiation, asking for help. This is truly wonderful. One thing that really stuck with me is that you talked about the team as a most important factor for the success of a company. And it's true. Some research by the Harvard Business Review says that 60% of ventures fail because of team dynamics. You talked about passion. We all know that passion is the fuel that entrepreneurs need to keep going. Some say it predicts the levels of creativity, persistence, even venture performance. And you also mentioned a study by your co-founder, Eva De Mol. I think you were also involved in that study, where you surveyed more than 100 tech companies, and you found that passion can backfire. It can negatively correlate with team performance. And you briefly mentioned this when you said that if the passions are not aligned well, conflict can arise. But at the same time, you said conflict is important. So I want to really dig deeper on that point. How do you think it's best for the team to ensure that they are aligned on the values, on the expectations, on the dreams for their company? Is it at the very early stage when the team is forming, when you're recruiting? Because you say, the study has found that it's this conflict in passion or misalignment in passion is particularly harmful during the late phases of the venture. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and the role of communication in it? Because you mentioned bring in mediators so that they can facilitate this conversation. Do not take it personally. Wonderful examples. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's important to do this from the start and all the time, because things also change. And it's easy to assume when you start a company together that you have the same dreams for that company, but that's not often the case. So you really need to ask the difficult questions to each other to get to that point, and you need to keep doing that. And I think especially when you have a co-founder, it's like a marriage. And what I've always felt is super key is to continue to realize that if a person is truly different than you are, they have certain strengths that the company needs. And they probably have also things that you annoy about them. But it's a package. You cannot just pick the the thing that you like. And you should realize that you're probably annoying at some points as well. Nobody is perfect, but you have these packages that you need. And to give really a good example, I'm a very black and white person, and very much on the details. And I worked with somebody who was way less black and white and less about detail, but that made her a very creative and strategic person. And this made me very good on product. And you need both, but sometimes it can be, if I'm working on a plan, I'm working on a plan. I don't change that easily, and somebody else can. And you can be annoyed, and the other person will be annoyed because you don't change. But you need to continue to realize that you need both these things, and that what makes the company great is both of you. Mm-hmm. And you need to talk to each other and all the time. And when you start doing that from the beginning, it's much more easy later on to bring up certain things. So yeah, I think that's super super crucial. And also it's important to stay sharp, because when you work together for 5 or 10 years, you accept certain things from the other person, because you appreciate that person as a whole. And that's the moment where you start to stop speaking up about certain things. And that's the moment where you can get annoyed about things. So continue the conversation, even if it's a difficult conversation, is so crucial here. And talk about the shared vision. I think everybody in the company needs to understand what they're working for and why they are doing things, and to prioritize. And so you need to talk about it all the time, especially also your vision on day one is maybe not the same as in 5 years time, plus new people show up at the company. So yeah, very long answer, sorry.
It's spot on. It emphasizes the importance of communication between co-founders and the whole team, as well as honesty and self-awareness, a degree of self-awareness of our own limitations and how we can be complementary, how we as well can be annoying, as you said. Our audience is a group of entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, who are scoping out how to start, maybe how to begin, or perhaps they have already started that journey and they're trying to figure out how to get whatever they've built off the ground. One thing entrepreneurs and everybody really will always deal with is feeling like an imposter. You mentioned putting ourselves in the limelight. You said, get your stick your neck out, see, I'm here, I'm amazing. Do you have you ever felt like an imposter, and how do you practically deal with it? Do you surround yourself by people who you can trust and you believe them when they say you're amazing? How do you personally, have you experienced it at all, and how do you recommend one deals with a feeling like this?
No, yes, I definitely experienced it and still do, to be honest. I've won like a ton of awards, I've built successful companies, and still I can be easily impressed by what others did, or feel like, oh, I was just lucky. Or, I mean, I think a lot of people have that, and it's not a problem as long as it doesn't hold you back. I think it's not a bad thing to have a little bit of an imposter syndrome, as long as you don't have your dreams limited, or it also keeps you sharp to continue to improve yourself. I always set new goals for myself. I always try to be better. And I do have people that when they tell me, I'm great and I believe it, but I also think there's things to improve, and yeah, I don't think per se it's a bad thing. Just you should get over it and feel it when you're at home and not when you're putting your company out there.
Wonderful advice.
That maybe also helps, because I think for myself, I've always felt a little bit insecure about saying, oh, I'm great, but when you find you're doing it for the company, it makes it maybe more easy. I mean, I don't per se need the attention for me as a person, but I need it for the company. And as soon as you realize that, maybe it becomes more easy. At least for me, that works.
Wonderful. So I think the key and the power here is, and the message is that it's okay to feel it, but not to act on it, not to let it get the best out of us. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I will ask.
I saw here a question on the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
When you hire the best people for the company, I think when you're building a company, at least that's my experience, when we hired this VP data engineering who became our CTO, it was more of a that I didn't worry about that side of the business anymore, than that I felt insecure by it. It was more like, oh, it's so nice to have somebody take care of that. And the same when we hired a COO. After a week, I was like, how did we ever do this without him? And it's such a relief to have somebody do that. And for me, it always was a next step to making the company more successful and growing further. So yeah, and I always see people that are better than me at something as an amazing way for me to focus on what I'm really best at, than that I feel insecure. And the good thing is, as the owner, the founder of the company, you don't need to feel insecure because you're still the founder. You always have the best title.
Wonderful. I think it takes a lot of courage and confidence to know and realize one's limitations, and being secure about what you know and don't know, and act accordingly. I will get back to the Q&A in a moment, but one question I picked from the Q&A as well, but I will paraphrase in a way. When you were speaking about diversity, and this is something you're very passionate about, and we are very passionate about in EnterpriseWOMEN, a program that aims really to help women scale up their businesses, because we see women underrepresented in entrepreneurship, and we'll get to that in a moment. Your company is based on an AI model that helps you fund companies with diverse teams, and that model is based on the PhD of your co-founder Eva De Mol, who did her PhD in economics. And you believe that, so you own that AI model, and you believe that it removes biases that determine which founders get funded, such as previous connections in the tech ecosystem, confidence levels, physical appearance, or even maybe physical ability, like being not blind. Can you tell us a little bit more about that model, and how do you test and know that it works? And one of the questions was, is it available? Is it an open source code?
No, it's not an open source code. It soon will be available online, because one of the things that currently limit a lot of founders from being funded is network. So for a lot of VCs, you need introductions, warm introductions, to get their attention. And we strongly believe that we leave a lot of opportunities at the table by doing that, because not everybody is born into a world with connections. Not everybody went to the same university where they can easily get those connections, and it doesn't impact your ability as an entrepreneur. So, and people tend to say, well, if you're really good, you will manage to get an introduction, but it's not true. You can only say that when you yourself are in those networks. When you're outside those networks, you will know that it's super difficult to get into these networks. And I think people should not spend time trying to get to us. They should spend their time working on their company. So that's why we're going to put our technology online, so entrepreneurs can go through the analysis without knowing it, and we just simply look at the facts. And this way also remove the bias, because as mentioned before, bias is a human thing. So you tend to look at things you understand, people you can recognize. But I think if you look much more data driven at things, you remove the bias. And especially when you look at teams in a data driven way, I strongly believe you can get that percentage of 60% down significantly. And for us then have better results.
Great. I think many people are looking forward to having it, available. A
Yeah.
question from Felipe Fuentes, who says, an entrepreneur in early stage, how do we know when to carry on and when to drop it, especially when we receive so many no's? And she thanks you for the presentation and insight. Sorry, Felipe, yeah. I don't know whether you're a man or a woman.
Well, I think that's a super important question, and it's really difficult because with my previous company, there have been moments where everybody told us, that we should give up. And we didn't want to do that because we still believed in it. And I think what's really important is that as a person, you still see the little successes, the little data points that prove that you're on the right path. I think from the outside, you only see the bigger picture. And I think as long as you don't see the smaller little proof points, that's the moment where you maybe should give up if you've tried already for a long time. But when everybody else from the outside said, oh, give up, we were like, no, but we see this happening and we see these clients and we see this. And you might not see that yet from the outside, but we see it. And I think, yeah, that's how you know. But again, it's super difficult because you admitting that it's not working is, I think, the hardest thing ever. Mm-hmm. But try to, and that's what we also do when we choose to invest, look at the facts and don't let your emotions get in the way. And that's super difficult, but that's, I think, the only way to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from Gennaro. How do we balance the concept of first say yes with the opportunity cost of saying yes?
Yes, there you go. No, I think the first say yes thing really refers to when you're asked to do some things outside your comfort zone. So that's more personal. And the opportunity cost of saying yes is more related to your business. So for me, these are two separate things. Mm-hmm. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Another question by Anemoon. So many business ideas pop up all the time. How do we make the decision regarding which one to pursue?
I think I've had many people. Well, I've had many people tell me, oh, one day I want to be an entrepreneur, or, oh, I have this idea, but, and I really think that when you are an entrepreneur and you have the right idea, you only have reasons to do it. I think as long as you have reasons not to do it, or you come up with reasons not to do it, it's either not the right idea or you're not an entrepreneur. Because I always so much felt the urge to pursue on an idea that all the downsides other people came up with, and I would say no, look at the idea and look at the vision we have and look at the plan, And I think, yeah, that combination is really important. The right idea and be an entrepreneur, then you have no other option to do it.
Right. What other questions have we got? Jeremy asks, Claire Rose's question we've answered, the team analysis model that refers to the AI for diversity. The question says, it looks like the problem already starts at the younger age. Is this then also a parental problem? And question from Jeremy.
Yeah, well, I think as well, but it's a problem that's it's at schools, it's at home, it's on TV, it's in toy stores, it's in a lot of places where things are confirmed all the time, and when where you're told, one easy trick for people to change is when people tend to tell girls that they are pretty and boys that they are smart. And I think it's perfectly fine to tell girls that they are pretty, but I also think it's important to tell them that they are smart, because people start to believe that. And this is an easy thing that everybody can implement tomorrow. I think in general, as a society, there's a lot of change that is necessary, because these stereotypes are so embedded in a lot of things we do that, it's not just the parents, it's everybody.
It's such a complex problem because, as you said, it's so deeply embedded, but also accumulative. It has accumulated over years and years of ways of parenting, of social norms, of educational systems. And the complexity of this problem is that it's so multifaceted.
Yeah.
You have the parents, you have society, you have peer groups, you have educational system, you have the media, you have the television, you get on the train and there's an ad slammed on the train showing a little girl being a nurse and a little boy being an engineer. So you see it everywhere, and it's just subliminal messaging bombarding us all the time.
Yeah.
We've answered all the questions in the Q&A. Please keep them coming if you have any more. But meanwhile, I have a question for you, Janneke, as building on this question, on your experience as a woman VC. We know that women are underrepresented in the entrepreneurial landscape, but also in venture capital. Women in the UK comprise only 27% of venture capital labor force, compared to 47% of the general labor force overall. And when you think about the decision making in VC in the UK, when you look at the number there, women are only 13%, huge underrepresentation. Have you faced bias yourself? I mean, you have investors to answer to, things to deliver. Do you constantly feel you have to prove yourself? How has your experience been?
Mixed. Yes, we have faced things as well, and meetings that you're like, really, did this just happen? But we also have a lot of investors that support us, that see this as important. We have a different story with our combination of me being an entrepreneur and Eva being on the science side, and both have investor experience. So I think that combination still attracts investors, and we sometimes tell each other to stay also positive. People that don't believe in this and that don't think women can do this, they would never be the right investor. But yeah, definitely sometimes it can be frustrating, but I also don't want to, I try to focus on the positive things, the investors that do believe in us, and for the right reasons. And in the meantime, I try to work on change as well, because I think when you're at a certain position, you're obliged to speak up because you can. So I try to make that combination, but yeah, always try to stay positive. And I think there will be a point in the future where change will happen. And yeah, there will always be people who don't believe in this, but yeah. I don't think we can change them, but it can be frustrating sometimes, definitely.
It's a long journey, and it's wonderful to see that you're looking at changing the culture as well. One question from Rodrigo: what's your opinion about the copycat companies? How does your model assess the value of an original idea?
Well, the model really looks at teams. So we as a VC fund also, of course, look at an ID and the timing, and but we believe that it's in the end the team that will make the difference. There's multiple people that come up with the same ID, but some are successful and others are not. And it's the team that makes that difference. So, and there's always people that come up with the same ID. So yeah, that's not so much the problem. We still need to believe that it's a good idea and that there's a market for it and that the timing is right. But yeah, we hardly come across a company that's the only one in a space. And to be honest, that's not also per se a good thing when people say, oh, we don't have competition. Well, if nobody else thinks it interesting, is there really a market? Or are you creating a whole new market? So yeah.
Wonderful. A question from Phi James regarding helping women reach high or lean in at crucial early age. She asks, what ways, or maybe he asks, what ways do you think we can do this? I've been asked to talk at some schools by parents, and I'm happy to do this and offered to do it, but what are alternative ways? She's interested in knowing alternative ways, or he's interested in alternative ways.
Yeah, I think schools are a great option, but also I speak often for students at bigger events where also younger people are invited, but you can also start around you, speak in the press, with magazines that are focused on these groups. There's a lot of ways to reach them, but you can start by the people you know that are close to you. Mm-hmm. And I think in the UK there's this organization Founders for School, and they are always looking for people to speak at schools to show the school kids what kind of things are possible. So yeah, Founders for School, check that one out.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one for Phi then. Apologies, I don't know your pronouns. Please forgive me. Uyen asks about the idea of perception equals reality, and asks, is it one way of us trying to fake it till you make it? What if people find out that you're a 2-person team in a 12-desk office?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, the fake it till you make it is indeed another way of putting it. But what I always think is very important, that it's not about lying. When you talk about a 12-desk office, it shows some ambition, but you're not lying about just being there with 2 people. And it's a fine balance. I think the perception and the reality can't be too far off, but the timing and topic can just make a really big impact. I've seen so many press releases of competitor where the headline was amazing, and then I looked into the article and I was like, there's nothing really there. But people don't care. I've had discussions with clients literally who said, yeah, but they have this and this feature, and then I was having a discussion with them saying, but technically it's not possible, and they still said, yeah, we still want to have it, and then they sign, and that's often a 1-year contract, and then they want that feature. So I'm not against, I'm not in favor of lying. I think there should be a good balance between people's perception and reality, but understanding the fact that you can influence how people think about you, the perception they have of you. That was really a big change for me in how we operated and communicated. So it's, I think, more that realization that that's the case. then that I think it's a good idea to lie. I hope this answers the question.
I'm sure it did. Yes, I'm sure it does answer. A question from Arnaldo. He says, great lecture, and would like to ask about strategic partnerships between corporations and startups versus venture capital.
I'm strategic. So as an alternative, then I take it. And strategic partnerships between corporations and startups as an alternative to venture capital.
I'd understand it that way as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one does not exclude the other. I think the good thing about venture capital is that it allows you to stay independent and choose your own strategy. I think if you have a big partnership when you're a small company with one big client, that dependency is not healthy. It's often, for a startup, not a very good thing, because if you have one super big client and you lose them, everything goes down, and people tend to want to custom too many things for that corporate, so you end up becoming sort of their supplier. So you need to really be aware of that. Plus, one thing that's important with corporates, they're probably your exit. So if you have them as an investor on board, for example, that might limit your exit options. So that's the difference. I'm not sure if it answers the question, but otherwise reach out to me on email to clarify, please.
Yes, maybe worth adding here that Janneke has been really very generous with her time, and she's accepting emails from you if you have any further questions. I'm aware of the time, so I will take one more question before we close. Question from Nina. The question builds on the question I asked you before on your experience as a female VC. So as a female investor, how difficult is it for you to raise money for your fund?
Yes, it's not easy, but then again, I also think it should not be easy for anybody, because you're going to invest with other people's money, and it's good that there's a process that's thorough and that makes sure that you are, that you're serious, that you have a plan, that you thought of a lot of things. So I'm not against it being difficult. It's just frustrating sometimes that you see people showing up with a deck, getting money, and you have to go through all kind of hula hoops and proofs and to get to the same result. But yeah, we so much believe in our funds and our vision that we don't mind, and we just see this as the first step in a very long plan we have. And this might be a little bit more difficult step, but the next one will be more easy when people see how successful we are.
Yes, you build a sort of track record.
Yeah.
Janneke, thank you so much for the insightful talk and the wonderful discussion afterwards. I think our entrepreneurs are going, I'd say going home, but they're actually already home. So they're just leaving this conversation with an arsenal of insight, ideas, inspiration to either start something amazing or continue building the amazing things they've been working on. I would like to thank the audience for listening, for staying with us for the whole time, for interacting, for being so engaged. It's been wonderful sort of having you with us, through your questions. I invite you to connect with Janneke if you have any questions. Also, building on what Janneke said regarding diversity, regarding the experience of women, EnterpriseWOMEN, my program at Cambridge Business School's Entrepreneurship Center exists to help women make their businesses sustainable, to scale up, and we want to tip that balance. We want to change and challenge the status quo. I encourage you to sign up to the newsletter and see our upcoming events. And although it has women in the name, it's for everybody. Everybody's welcome, and we particularly encourage minority entrepreneurs of minority backgrounds to attend. I'm happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, and I'm always happy to hear from you. Thank you again. Thank you, Janneke, and I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.